This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. I'm John Trout. It's Thursday, March 20th, 2025. Here's what's coming up on America in the Morning.
Another step is taken toward a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine.
President Trump and Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky had a fantastic phone conversation.
I'm Jim Roope.
The Trump administration could face potential consequences over deportation flights, according to a federal judge. I'm Clayton Neville.
The White House has halted roughly $175 million in federal funding to the University of Pennsylvania. Donna Warder, Washington.
On Wall Street, the Fed held rates steady and said 2 interest rate cuts are on the table for this year. I'm Jessica Ettinger.
President Trump expected to sign an executive order to end the Department of Education, and a judge sides with DOJ in a lawsuit over the Institute for Peace.
Greenpeace has been found liable for defamation by a North Dakota jury. I'm Hayat Panjwani.
All ahead on America in the Morning. Following his phone call a day earlier with Vladimir Putin, President Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky had what the White House calls a fantastic phone call, as another big step is taken toward a ceasefire in Ukraine's war with Russia. Jim Roope reports that even though Zelensky said that words are not enough when it comes to Putin, there seems to be a pathway for peace.
Immediately following the approximately 1-hour call with President Zelensky, President Trump took to Truth Social to say the call was, quote, very good, end quote. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt read from a joint statement by Secretary of State Marco Rubio and National Security Advisor Mike Waltz that characterized the call as, quote, fantastic.
President Zelensky thanked President Trump for the support of the United States, especially the Javelin missiles that President Trump was first to provide in his efforts towards peace. The leaders agreed Ukraine and America will continue working together to bring about a real end to the war, and that lasting peace under President Trump's leadership can be achieved.
Leavitt says the two leaders focused much on President Trump's Tuesday call with Russian President Vladimir Putin.
They reviewed the situation in Kursk and agreed to share information closely between their defense staffs as the battlefield situation evolved.
Leavitt says Zelensky asked for more Patriot air defense missiles to protect his citizens, and President Trump said he will do what he can to find what's available, particularly in Europe. And on that front, Zelensky followed the call with Mr. Trump with a visit to Helsinki, Finland, to meet with Finnish President Alexander Stubb.
Mr. President Volodymyr, warmly welcome to Finland. It's a privilege to have you here in this very difficult situation. We will continue to exchange notes on how best work towards a just and lasting peace. I think I can speak on behalf of our whole nation that we are extremely proud and attached to what your peoples are doing. So warmly welcome to sunny Helsinki.
Thank you very much.
Back here at home, President Trump said after his call with Zelensky that they are very much on track to putting an end to the war between Ukraine and Russia. I'm Jim Roope.
A federal judge is giving the Trump administration more time to provide details on recent deportation flights. Correspondent Clayton Neville is following the story.
The judge is considering whether or not the Trump administration violated his weekend order that blocked the deportation of hundreds of alleged Venezuelan gang members under an 18th century law. The court's asking specifically for details about when the first 2 planes took off and when they landed, and insists that the information will be kept confidential. The president accusing the judge of overstepping his authority and calling for him to be impeached. Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, defended the flights when speaking to reporters.
Look, we abided by the court's decision. His written order was on 5 illegal aliens. They didn't want to deport him, and we abided by that. By the time the other order came, the plane was already over international waters with a plane full of terrorists and significant public safety threats. And, you know, to turn a plane around over international waters, we're going to refuel over international waters, come back and bring terrorists back to the United States. That's not what this president promised American people. What the president did was exactly the right thing.
Homan says that Americans mandated this from President Trump.
Deal with the border crisis, deal with illegal immigration, and deal with illegal alien crime, and that's exactly what we did. We removed terrorists. That should be a celebration. We removed terrorists from this country, and I stand by what the president did. I support 100%.
Attorney General Pam Bondi made clear that lawyers are working on the case and says the U.S. will answer the judge appropriately. She added, though, that the judge has no right to ask those questions.
President Trump has secured our borders and will continue to fight the cartels throughout this country, deport them all, or lock them up for the rest of their lives thanks to our prosecutors around this country where they belong. Under the last administration, cartels, criminals, they freely walked in and out of our country with impunity. No longer. Under Donald Trump, they live in fear, and they better live in fear because we're coming after all of them.
Trump's response to the judge in the case is drawing some backlash. Chief Supreme Court Justice John Roberts called for an appeal, not an impeachment of the judge, stating that an appeal is the appropriate response when disagreeing with the judge's decision. The Trump administration could face consequences, according to the judge, if he finds that his order was violated. I'm Clayton Neville.
The end of the U.S. Department of Education. When America in the Morning continues after these messages. This is America in the Morning. It's the first day of spring, and with it, some potential severe weather. Here's AccuWeather.com meteorologist LaTroy Thornton.
Severe thunderstorms on Wednesday brought several dozen wind reports rather tightly clustered over Illinois, Indiana, and Kentucky, along with some tornadoes in north-central Illinois, not far from Peoria. The area of low pressure associated with those damaging thunderstorms will quickly shift northeastward into Canada today, taking the threat for widespread severe weather out of the Great Lakes region. However, a new zone of low pressure develops over the mid-Atlantic by late in the day, and a cold front plowing into some warm, moist air flowing northward ahead of this feature will result in some risk for severe thunderstorms near the coast from southern Maryland to far northeastern South Carolina. These storms may produce small hail and even some localized damaging wind gusts. The tail end of this front brings some showers to southeastern Georgia and around the Big Bend of Florida, and showers extend northward through eastern Tennessee, western Pennsylvania, and much of New York. To the east of this area, places from south-central Pennsylvania to northern Virginia may have some thunder, but areas to the west of that zone are the most likely to get some snow mixing in for this first day of spring, mainly from lower Michigan into Indiana, thanks to cold air being pulled in on gusty northwest winds. Otherwise, milder air returns to the northern high plains and parts of the upper Midwest today, and it looks dry from the plains into the south, the southwest, and right through all but the far northern California coastline. However, the Northwest stays active as a parade of storms continues. The storm track will remain focused on this part of the country right through the weekend, with today bringing steady rain to the coast of Oregon and especially Washington. Showers will extend farther inland, with snow at times for the Cascades and into the northern Rockies through the day today. That's the weather across America. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist LaTroy Thornton.
Remember, follow us wherever you get your podcasts: Apple, Amazon, YouTube, Spotify. Just search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. Following weeks of staffing and spending cuts, President Trump is expected to sign a directive today to officially wind down the Department of Education. Maintaining a promise from last year, on the campaign trail, Trump said the department was full of, quote, radicals, zealots, and Marxists. The American Federation of Teachers issued a statement last night imploring Congress to oppose the executive order. Despite Trump's expected directive, the president will need Congress to sign off on eradicating the agency under Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution, and such a measure would require 60 votes to pass in the Senate to avoid a filibuster. Shifting gears, following major cuts to New York's Columbia University over their handling of campus protests against Israel, a second Ivy League school has been dealt a significant federal funding cut. The Trump administration has suspended $175 million in aid to the University of Pennsylvania over its policies regarding transgender athletes. Correspondent Donna Warder reports.
The White House says it has halted roughly $175 million in federal funding to the University of Pennsylvania because of a transgender athlete's participation in its swimming program. Penn has been facing an investigation by the Education Department focusing on its swimming program, but the federal money was suspended in a separate review of discretionary federal money going to universities. A Penn spokesperson says the school has not received any notification or details of the suspension in funding, but says Penn has always followed NCAA and Ivy League policies regarding student participation on athletic teams. Leah Thomas, a transgender woman, swam on the school's women's team and was the first openly transgender athlete to win a Division I title in 2022. Donna Warder, Washington.
Markets down, adjusting your 401k. When America in the Morning continues after these messages. This is America in the Morning. The Business Report is brought to you by Fisher Investments. Fisher Investments has a team of specialists in investing, financial planning, estate planning, and more. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. With the Thursday edition, here's CNBC's Jessica Ettinger.
Wall Street opens this morning for the first day of spring trading after a winning day for stocks yesterday. Investors really liked that the Fed chair said interest rate cuts are on the table for this year, even with the Trump tariffs and a trade war. The Dow was up 380 points, the Nasdaq up 240. The Fed did hold interest rates steady at the meeting that ended yesterday. Fed Chair Jay Powell said those 2 interest rate cuts could come this year. They're going to wait and see if the Trump tariffs drive up inflation before making any moves, even though the economy has been good. Consumer sentiment has not. It's been tanking. Americans just don't like where prices are.
Grocery bill is about past inflation, really. There was inflation in 21, 2, and 3, and prices went up. The current level, it's not the change in prices. It's they're unhappy, and they're not wrong to be unhappy that prices went up quite a bit, and they're paying a lot for those things. So I think that is the fundamental fact, and has been for a long time, a couple of years, why people are unhappy with the economy. It's not that the economy is not growing. It's not that inflation is really high. It's not that unemployment is high. It's none of those things. And, it's a pretty good economy. But people are unhappy because of the price level.
That's Fed Chair Jay Powell. Meantime, CNBC economics reporter Steve Leisman on the first ever recession watch from a longtime highly regarded economic forecasting organization.
The UCLA Anderson forecast, for the first time since it was founded in 1952, issued what it called a recession watch, warning that the combination of the president's policies, if fully enacted, could cause an economic contraction. This is a forecast that administration officials from the president on down have not specifically ruled out.
UCLA Anderson's forecast says that Trump policies, if fully enacted, promise a recession. More Americans are scared. They're trading inside their 401ks. They want to hold on to gains, with the S&P 500 index down 3.5% so far this year. But CNBC's Sharon Epperson spoke with SunWealth's Winnie Sun about this.
Now, some investors probably should rebalance their portfolios after 2 years of strong stock market gains. But financial advisors say, first, you need a plan.
Don't make large movements in your 401k unless you know why exactly that you're doing that. And the answer can't just be because I'm nervous. It has to be like, well, I'm going to need this money in the next 6 months or 12 months.
She says you should have a plan for funding an emergency like a job loss with ample cash reserves, as well as investing for future goals like retirement. So that way you have the ability to pivot.
On today's watch list, earnings from Olive Garden parent Darden Restaurants, FedEx, and Nike. Free at Dairy Queen today, a small soft-serve vanilla cone for the first day of spring.
Thank you, CNBC's Jessica Ettinger. When we return on America in the Morning, new ruling on gender-affirming care after these messages. This is America in the Morning. A federal judge rules in favor of the Trump administration after a government-funded nonprofit organization called the U.S. Institute for Peace filed a lawsuit to stop the Department of Government Efficiency from making budget cuts. The Washington, D.C.-based group sued to stop DOJ from mounting what it called a lawless assault against it, while Judge Beryl Howell said in her decision that she was not in favor of how DOJ operates. She said, according to the law, she could not deny their restraining order. President Trump fired 11 of the Institute's 14 board members last week. In other legislative action, an appeals court has handed down a ruling on gender-affirming care in Ohio. Lisa Dwyer has that story.
A 3-judge panel has ruled that Ohio's ban on gender-affirming care for minors is unconstitutional and ordered it permanently blocked by a trial court. The blocked law sought to ban counseling, surgery, and hormone therapy for youth, unless they are already receiving such therapies and a doctor deems it risky to stop. A 10th District Court of Appeals panel reversed a lower court's ruling 2-1 that upheld the law. The judges found it unconstitutionally targets only patients seeking gender transitions and exceeds the state's policing power over parents. The ACLU calls the ruling historic. The state attorney general has vowed to immediately appeal. I'm Lisa Dwyer.
It's a verdict that could bankrupt the organization. Correspondent Haya Panjwani reports on a lawsuit involving Greenpeace and an oil pipeline.
The case reaches back to protests in 2016 and 2017 against the Dakota Access Oil Pipeline in its Missouri River crossing upstream of the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe's reservation. For years, the tribe has opposed the line as a risk to its water supply. The jury said the environmental advocacy group must pay hundreds of millions of dollars to Dallas-based Energy Transfer and its subsidiary, Dakota Access. The companies had alleged defamation, trespass, nuisance, civil conspiracy, and other claims against the Greenpeace companies. Attorneys for Greenpeace denied the claims. I'm Haya Panjwani.
America in the Morning for Thursday, March 20th, 2025 is produced by Jeff McKay. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One. This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. I'm John Trout. Coming up this half hour.
The Federal Reserve is leaving its benchmark interest rate unchanged. Sagar Meghani, Washington.
The Justice Department and Trump administration call attacks on Tesla cars and dealerships domestic terrorism. I'm John Stolness in Washington.
An American being held in the Dominican Republic returns home. I'm Clayton Neville.
Debating Louisiana's nitrogen execution. A judge orders an anti-Israel activist trial to move to New Jersey, a Minnesota state senator in trouble with the law, and a West Virginia judge throws the book at parents accused of child abuse.
Another Republican member of Congress heard boos at a town hall meeting. I'm Ed Donahue.
Back after these messages. This is America in the Morning. Severe weather from yesterday is on the move. Let's find out where it's headed. Here's AccuWeather.com meteorologist LaTroy Thornton.
Severe thunderstorms on Wednesday brought several dozen wind reports rather tightly clustered over Illinois, Indiana, and Kentucky, along with some tornadoes in north central Illinois, not far from Peoria. The area of low pressure associated with those damaging thunderstorms will quickly shift northeastward into Canada today, taking the threat for widespread severe weather out of the Great Lakes region. However, a new zone of low pressure develops over the mid-Atlantic by late in the day, and a cold front plowing into some warm, moist air flowing northward ahead of this feature will result in some risk for severe thunderstorms near the coast from southern Maryland to far northeastern South Carolina. These storms may produce small hail and even some localized damaging wind gusts. The tail end of this front brings some showers to southeastern Georgia and around the Big Bend of Florida, and showers extend northward through eastern Tennessee, western Pennsylvania, and much of New York. To the east of this area, places from south central Pennsylvania to northern Virginia may have some thunder, but areas to the west of that zone are the most likely to get some snow mixing in for this first day of spring, mainly from lower Michigan into Indiana, thanks to cold air being pulled in on gusty northwest winds. Otherwise, milder air returns to the northern high plains and parts of the upper Midwest today, and it looks dry from the plains into the south, the southwest, and right through all but the far northern California coastline. However, the Northwest stays active as a parade of storms continues. The storm track will remain focused on this part of the country right through the weekend, with today bringing steady rain to the coast of Oregon and especially Washington. Showers will extend farther inland, with snow at times for the Cascades and into the northern Rockies through the day today. That's the weather across America. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist LaTroy Thornton.
Remember, you can follow us everywhere you get your podcasts. Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon. Just search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. Wall Street clearly welcomed Fed Chairman Jerome Powell's belief that interest rate cuts could still happen this year, despite tariff concerns and inflation. He expects to move downward, but warned of high economic uncertainty. Washington correspondent Sagar Meghani reports.
The Federal Reserve is leaving its benchmark interest rate unchanged while signaling it still expects 2 more rate cuts this year. The Fed says inflation remains stubbornly inflated and predicts it will inch up this year further from its 2% goal due to President Trump's tariffs.
I do think with the arrival of the tariff inflation, further progress may be delayed. The SEP doesn't really show further downward progress on inflation this year, and that's really due to the tariffs coming in.
Jerome Powell and the central bank see slower economic growth this year and next, with higher unemployment. Powell, though, notes the economy seems healthy, but notes falling consumer sentiment.
I don't know anyone who has a lot of confidence in their forecast. I mean, the point is we are at, we're at a place where we can cut, or we can hold what is clearly a restrictive stance of policy, and that's what I mean. I think that's well positioned. Forecasting right now, forecasting is always very, very hard, and in the current situation, I just think uncertainty is remarkably high.
Higher inflation would usually lead the Fed to keep interest rates high. Slower growth and higher unemployment would often lead to cuts. It all makes a forecast hard right now.
What would you write down?
Powell says for the time being.
You're reading about developments. The news is full of developments of tariffs being put on and taken off and things like that. Some of that is noise in the sense that it's not really telling you anything. You're trying to extract a signal from that, and the signal is what's going to be the effect on economic activity, on inflation, on employment, and all those things. We do not need to be in a hurry to adjust our policy stance.
Sagar Meghani, Washington.
Amidst a wave of attacks against Tesla cars and dealerships across the country, the Trump administration is promising to find the perpetrators, calling the attacks an act of domestic terrorism. John Stolness has the story from Washington.
Ever since Elon Musk began his work heading President Trump's Doge Committee, attacks against the Tesla auto brand he created have been on the rise, both here in the U.S. and abroad. No injuries have been reported as of yet. Attorney General Pam Bondi on Fox News called the attacks domestic terrorism and said the DOJ will go after the perpetrators.
We are coming after you. We believe these are organized. These are not individuals out there throughout the country doing this on their own. They're targeting Tesla owners. They're targeting Tesla dealerships. They're targeting Elon Musk, who is out there trying to save our country, and it will not be tolerated.
Much of the violence has been located in the Pacific Northwest, such as in Oregon, where a man threw Molotov cocktails at a Tesla store in Salem. At least 2 people have fired shots at showrooms. In Seattle, 4 Cybertrucks were set on fire, and similar attacks have taken place in Las Vegas. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt yesterday urged Democrats to speak out against the attacks.
We certainly think it's despicable, the violence that has taken place against Tesla, the company, its employees, and also just Americans who have chosen to drive an electric vehicle. Many of them are Democrats, by the way. Democrats were big supporters of Tesla and of electric vehicles until Elon Musk decided to vote for Donald Trump.
A number of arrests have been made, and Bondi tells Fox News they are trying to find out if a group or individual is funding these attacks.
We have charged multiple people. Get ready, more coming. One we charged in Oregon is facing 5 to 20 years in prison. We filed in Colorado. We filed in South Carolina. There are more coming. And yes, the funding is one thing we are looking at among many others.
ATF agents say they found writings critical of Musk and Doge in the wallet and bedroom of a South Carolina man who was arrested for setting fire to a Tesla charging station. On a podcast hosted by Senator Ted Cruz, Musk himself said at least some of the attacks were organized and paid for by left-wing organizations, and that they were funded by left-wing billionaires. He did not give specifics. John Stolness, Washington.
There's growing debate in Louisiana after the state, for the first time, used nitrogen in the execution of a death row inmate. As Julie Walker reports, while some question whether the use of nitrogen or even executing the inmate is the right thing to do, others are calling it justice served for an unthinkable crime.
Louisiana used nitrogen gas to put Jesse Hoffman Jr. to death Tuesday for killing Molly Elliott.
Nitrogen gas began to flow at approximately 6:21 p.m. and flowed for approximately 19 minutes. At approximately 6:40 p.m., the curtain to the witness chamber closed. Subsequently, the curtain to the witness chamber opened, and Warden Vanoy informed the witnesses that at approximately 6:50 p.m., the execution of Mr. Hoffman was carried out.
Witnesses said he appeared to shake. Officials maintain the method is painless. Louisiana Attorney General Liz Murrill.
Molly was brutally and mercilessly raped and murdered. She was only 28 years old. That was nearly 30 years ago. Tonight, justice was served for Molly Elliott and for the state of Louisiana.
The execution comes after a 15-year hiatus in the state. Samantha Kennedy with the Promise of Justice Initiative says they hope this is not a pattern.
There are states around us that are what we call the killing states, and I don't think that it's helpful or wise for Louisiana to follow that path. I think that there's a lot of ways that we can build a future, and if we're worried about violence and we're worried about crime and we're worried about all these sorts of things, then I think that we can look at what most of the country does, which doesn't kill people, and figure out how to address crime and how to address violence.
3 other executions by lethal injection are scheduled this week in Arizona, Florida, and Oklahoma. I'm Julie Walker.
Politician grapples with rebellious town hall meeting when America in the Morning continues after these messages. You're with America in the Morning. I'm John Trout. An American previously detained in the Dominican Republic is back in the United States after being named a person of interest in the death of a college student. Correspondent Clayton Neville reports.
22-year-old Joshua Roope is believed to be one of the last people who saw 20-year-old Sudiska Konanki before she disappeared March 6th from the beach near a resort in Punta Cana. Roope was being held by authorities in the Dominican Republic, but this week a judge ruled that because Roope is not a suspect and instead a witness, police don't have evidence to hold him. Konanki's parents heartbroken over their daughter's death.
We are coming to the terms with the fact that our daughter has drowned. This is incredibly difficult for us to process.
Roope says he and the 20-year-old got caught in a strong rip current, and she never returned to shore. As Roope comes back to the States, investigators say he has been cooperative in the investigation. I'm Clayton Neville.
An anti-Israel activist detained by the U.S. government over his participation in demonstrations at New York's Columbia University was told by a judge he can challenge the legality of his detention, but the case should be heard in New Jersey. 30-year-old Mahmoud Khalil was detained by federal agents, arrested at his Columbia University apartment where he was still attending school. He was taken to New Jersey to be held and then to a facility in Louisiana. There, a judge ordered he face trial in New Jersey. Khalil, an international affairs graduate student, was one of the leaders of the protests against Israel and the war in Gaza. He faces revocation of his student visa and deportation. America in the Morning continues. Yet another congressional town hall meeting that got loud and unruly, this time in Nebraska. Correspondent Ed Donahue reports.
There were more than 200 people at a high school auditorium in eastern Nebraska to hear from Republican Congressman Mike Flood.
We have the Department of Government Efficiency that is looking at, and it's
Flood was speaking in Columbus, Nebraska, the seat of a county that voted nearly 3-1 for Donald Trump in November. Pat Lostro traveled 30 miles to be at that meeting.
What Trump and Musk are doing are way beyond the boundaries of how things should be done in a democracy.
Fear of cuts to social services dominated the discussion. Flood says he was prepared.
I knew that this was going to be contentious at times, and it was important to me that even if somebody was disrupting the meeting, they didn't feel like they were going to get kicked out or get in trouble.
Most in the crowd in Nebraska gave Flood credit for showing up in person and hearing their concerns. I'm Ed Donahue.
A Minnesota state senator is in serious trouble with the law. Authorities arrested 40-year-old Justin Eichhorn as part of a sting operation. The state senator had communicated with who he thought was a teenage girl to have sex with. He drove to a location in Bloomington, Minnesota to meet the girl, who turned out to be a police officer. Eichhorn, who is married with 4 children, was charged with attempted coercion and enticement of a minor, a federal charge. Members of both the Minnesota Republican Party and the Minnesota DFL Party are calling for Eichhorn's immediate resignation. Amazon had a major case dismissed by a judge in Seattle, claiming they promoted their own branded products over those of their vendors. Here's Chuck Palm with that in today's Tech News.
Amazon has beat a lawsuit accusing them of defrauding their shareholders about its treatment of third-party sellers and their plans to expand capacity. The FTC suit, accusing the world's largest online store of antitrust activities, was dismissed by U.S. District Judge John Chun in Seattle with prejudice, meaning it cannot be brought up again. Shareholders have accused Amazon of concealing an algorithm that ensured that its private label products would cost less than other outside merchandise, causing a general increase in pricing for their customers. The shareholders also accused Amazon of concealing their overexpansion of its infrastructure and fulfillment network, causing their stock price to tumble in April of 2022. In the judge's dismissal order, he stated he found no compelling and particularized facts to suggest that executives knew that Amazon was allegedly favoring their own products over those of outside sellers. In addition, the FTC sued Amazon in September of 2023, accusing it of becoming a monopoly. Find me at chuckpalm.com.
We get caught up on sports now from Robert Workman.
The last of the first 4 games of the NCAA men's basketball tournament Wednesday in Dayton. Mount St. Mary's rocked American University 83-72 for the 16 seed in the East. Mountaineers coach Donnie Lind.
It was a different game than we've played over the course of the last couple weeks. Obviously offense was clicking pretty well. Credit to American, they battled the whole time.
They'll face Duke on Friday in Raleigh. And Xavier erased a double-digit deficit to top Texas 86-80 for the 11th seed in the Midwest. They will meet Illinois in Milwaukee on Friday. After that appetizer, the main course. Today and tonight, 16 first-round games, starting with Creighton and Louisville in Lexington, Kentucky, a little past noon Eastern time, and continuing until UNC Wilmington and Texas Tech wrap up the evening in Wichita, Kansas around midnight. Then we turn around and do it all over again on Friday. NIT 9 first-round games at campus sites last night, including wins for all 4 top seeds, SMU, Dayton, UC Irvine, and San Francisco. The women's first 4 games wrap up tonight, and their tournament first-round action begins Friday and Saturday. NBA make it 3 losses in a row for the Cavaliers. They fall to the Kings 123-119. That matches Cleveland's longest losing streak of the season. Thunder rolled over the Sixers 133-100 to move ahead of the Cavs for the best record in the association. And the Dodgers doubled up the Cubs 6-3 to sweep the 2-game Tokyo series. Shohei Ohtani hit one of 3 Dodger dingers. Opening day in North America, 1 week from today. That's Thursday Sports.
Thank you, Robert. When we return on America in the Morning, over 100 years in prison, the sentence for these abusive parents. The full story after these messages. This is America in the Morning. A West Virginia judge throws the book at a couple after they were found guilty of heinously abusing their adopted children. Lisa Dwyer reports.
Jean K. Whitefeather received up to 215 years in prison, and her husband, Donald Lance, received a term of up to 160 years for abusing their adoptive children. The couple, who were white, adopted 5 black siblings while living in Minnesota, eventually moving the family to West Virginia in 2023. The couple were arrested after neighbors saw Lance lock the oldest girl and her teenage brother in a shed and then leaving the property. After using a crowbar to get them out, deputies eventually found the rest of the children in dirty clothing. The oldest girl, now 18, addressed the court directly, calling Whitefeather a monster. Whitefeather will be eligible for parole after serving 40 years and Lance after 30. I'm Lisa Dwyer.
The CEO of Netflix announces his plans for growth for the future of the popular streaming service. Kevin Carr has details.
On Wednesday, Variety published an interview with Netflix CEO Ted Sarandos about the ever-changing world of content distribution.
The purpose of Netflix when we first started was we were a DVD by mail company, but Reed Hastings, the founder, always thought that Netflix would be pretty much like it is right now.
Sarandos identified some of the problems with theatrical distribution that opens the door to Netflix's business plan.
There's fewer screens, the ticket prices are high, so it's become an increasingly elite thing to do to just be able to take your family to the theater.
The 60-year-old executive attributes the company's success to a home venue.
The evolution of the living room has been phenomenal, and I think our ability to navigate all those changes is what got us to where we are today.
Sarandos also teased some of the anticipated series and movies coming to your living room this year.
We have the return of our biggest franchises, so we have the finale of Stranger Things, which is going to be incredible, a third season of Squid Game, which the world is waiting for, the return of Wednesday, films from Guillermo del Toro and Noah Baumbach, and a new Knives Out film.
He also looks ahead to more sports offerings like Christmas Day football, which Netflix started last year.
Sports is part of the entertainment experience, and we want to be part of your entertainment experience.
Sarandos also offered insights into working with celebrities, from Meghan Markle saying she and Prince Harry are, quote, overly dismissed, to a difference of opinion with theatrical purist Christopher Nolan.
I totally respect his desire to make movies for the theaters and his lack of interest in making them direct to streaming.
I'm Kevin Carr.
A former studio engineer is facing charges of theft, allegedly stealing unreleased music from rapper Eminem and selling it online. Correspondent Donna Warder has the story.
Ex-Eminem studio engineer Joseph Strange of Holly, Michigan, has been charged with stealing the rap artist's unreleased music and selling it online. An FBI affidavit says more than 25 unreleased tunes were stored on password-protected hard drives kept in a safe at Eminem's studio near Detroit. Strange lost his job at the studio in 2021. One man told authorities he bought unreleased songs from Strange for about $50,000 in Bitcoin. A search of Strange's home turned up handwritten Eminem lyric sheets and hard drives with 12,000 audio files. If Strange is convicted of both copyright infringement and interstate transportation of stolen goods, he could face up to 15 years in prison. I'm Donna Warder.
Today is the first day of spring. There will be an equal amount of daylight and darkness. You may recall 10 years ago, 2015, there was a solar eclipse, an equinox, and a supermoon. America in the Morning on this Thursday, the first day of spring, March 20th, 2025, is produced by Jeff McKay. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One.